Welcome back, and welcome to another Dude Tour. Today we are at the San Francisco International Airport here in San Francisco, California. Our tour today will be taking us just west of Tracy here in Northern California. The location we're finding today is where the Altamont Free Concert took place. If you're new here at Dude Tours, what we do is we find interesting places here in Microsoft Flight Simulator and discuss the events that happened there. The Altamont Free Concert, held on December 6, 1969, at the Altamont Speedway here in Northern California, is remembered as a significant and controversial event in rock history. Today, we are back in one of our favorite aircraft. Here in the simulator, it is the Cessna 208B Grand Caravan. Let's get the aircraft started and the cockpit set up so we can take a look at today's flight plan.
Altamont was a nightmare. It was the exact 180 degrees out antithesis of Woodstock.
Why?
Vibe. Just totally different vibe.
The aircraft is started. Let's take a look at today's flight plan. We will be departing from San Francisco International Airport. Has the airport code KSFO, which is a major international airport located near San Francisco. It's one of the largest airports in the United States. It's located approximately 13 miles or 21 kilometers south of downtown. Originally, it was named Mills Field Municipal Airport, and it was later renamed to San Francisco Municipal Airport. And finally, in 1955, it was renamed San Francisco International Airport. We will depart and head northeast towards Oakland International Airport. From there, we'll head to Livermore, California, and the navigational waypoint that's named Altam, A-L-T-A-M. From there, we head southeast to Tracy Municipal Airport. We're taking this course because it will have us fly directly over the location of the Altamont concert, and that is today's destination here in the Microsoft Flight Simulator. The concert was conceived as the West Coast's answer to Woodstock, the iconic music festival that epitomized the summer of love. Organized primarily by the Rolling Stones, the idea was to cap off their U.S. tour with a free concert that would also feature a lineup of other prominent rock acts of the time. It all began in England after the Stones' successful free concert in London's Hyde Park on July 5, 1969. Following that show, Mick Jagger decided he wanted to do one in the U.S. to end their upcoming U.S. tour, and they picked San Francisco as the location. We are ready to taxi. The Rolling Stones' 1969 U.S. tour took place from November 7th to December 6th, 1969, consisting of many memorable performances for the band, and it's often considered one of the most important tours in rock history. The tour marked a pivotal moment for the Stones, as it was their first U.S. tour in 3 years, and the first with Mick Taylor as a full member after the departure of Brian Jones, who had died earlier that year. The concerts featured many songs from their then recently released album Beggar's Banquet, along with other hits and some new tracks from the upcoming album Let It Bleed. The tour was a commercial success, drawing large crowds and solidifying the Rolling Stones' status as one of the world's biggest rock bands. Some of the songs regularly performed during their tour included Jumpin' Jack Flash, Sympathy for the Devil, Street Fighting Man, Midnight Rambler, and Gimme Shelter. The lineup included Mick Jagger on vocals, Keith Richards on guitar, Mick Taylor on guitar, Bill Wyman on bass, and Charlie Watts on drums. Sam Cutler was the tour manager for the Rolling Stones at the time. The concert was to take place only a few months after Woodstock. The Woodstock Music and Art Fair, simply referred to as Woodstock, was a music festival held from August 15th to 18th in 1969. It attracted a crowd of more than 400,000 people and took place on Max Yasgur's dairy farm in Bethel, New York. That festival featured 32 acts performing outdoors, including legendary artists like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Who, and the Grateful Dead. Woodstock was notable for its fairly peaceful atmosphere despite the large crowds and challenging conditions such as rain and food shortages. We did a dude tour of the Woodstock location and the events, and I'll put a link to it in the description below and at the end of this video. The planning for the event is where things started to go wrong, and as we will learn, not much went right with the event. The concert was initially planned to take place in Golden Gate Park, but the city of San Francisco refused to issue the necessary permits for the event. The mayor at the time, Joseph Alioto, was not supportive of hosting a large hippie concert in San Francisco at the time. He had refused to issue the permits partly due to his frustration with the Haight-Ashbury scene in San Francisco. Logistical challenges emerged partly due to the short notice given by the Stones for organizing the festival, which was compounded by conflicts with other events at possible venues. The concert was originally scheduled to be held at the San Jose State University's practice field, since there had recently been a 3-day outdoor free festival there with 52 bands and 80,000 attendees. An attempt to secure that venue by the Rolling Stones failed. They were told that the city of San Jose was not in the mood for another large concert and the grounds were unavailable. Golden Gate Park in San Francisco was the next choice. However, previously scheduled Chicago Bears versus San Francisco 49ers football game at Kazar Stadium, located in Golden Gate Park, made that venue impractical. The 49ers played there until 1971. We have taxied to the runway and we are ready for takeoff. The venue was then changed to the Sears Point Raceway. However, a dispute with the Sears Point owners arose over them requiring a $100,000 cash deposit or escrow, as well as film distribution rights to a documentary that was being filmed during the event. That led to an impasse, and the organizers were looking for another option. The Altamont Raceway was suggested by its then-owner, local businessman Dick Carter. Dick had reached out to lawyer Melvin Belly, who was helping negotiate a deal for a venue, saying he just wanted the publicity for his racetrack and nothing more. After the call, the organizers sent 3 individuals to look at the site. The 3 were Michael Lang, who was one of the promoters and the face of Woodstock, along with Grateful Dead's manager Rock Scully, and Edward Beresford, known as Chip Monk, a lighting designer who lit Woodstock. The site appeared to Rock Scully as a remote, empty desert with no facilities to support that type of event and crowd of that size. But Michael Lang, who was experiencing the notoriety and glory of pulling off Woodstock, said it was doable, so the site was used. With little choice, the venue was changed once again. The concert was to take place on Saturday, December 6th. The location was switched on the night of Thursday, December 4th, meaning that the equipment set up at Sears Point in Sonoma had to be torn down and moved to Altamont in something close to 36 hours. Stage, lighting, sound systems, etc. all had to be moved. As it turned out, some of the equipment did not make the move, and the Grateful Dead had to supply sound equipment from their warehouse to be used by the performers. The site lacked proper food, medical, and sanitation facilities. There were also concerns by the local highway patrol and the adjacent landowners that Dick Carter's property was not capable of parking the cars expected for an event of this size. The lineup was a who's who of rock and folk music at the time. The Rolling Stones headlined the event, with other acts scheduled including Jefferson Airplane, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Santana, and the Grateful Dead. An estimated 300,000 people showed up for the concert. The hastily arranged venue, the inadequate facilities, and the lack of proper planning contributed to a tense and chaotic atmosphere. There was copious amounts of drugs available within the crowds, especially LSD. Sam Cutler, in later years, would float the theory that the only way so much LSD was freely accessible and distributed throughout the crowd was if federal authorities were undercover intentionally trying to cause problems. He theorized they hoped this would ensure the demise of these events where the counterculture was growing. It also appears that in just the short time between Woodstock and Altamont, the quality or the type of LSD on the street had also drastically changed. We are passing over Oakland International Airport. It has the airport code KOAK, which is an international airport here in Oakland, California. The airport is located 10 miles or 16 kilometers south of downtown Oakland. A poor choice in venue and a large quantity of drugs were just the start of the factors working against these event organizers. Unfairly, history has put the tragic outcome of the events on a motorcycle club, the Hells Angels. The Hells Angels were a well-known motorcycle club at the time, just as they are today. Over the years, many fingers have been pointed at who hired the Hells Angels to perform security at Altamont, but it's a bit more complicated than that. As Jerry Garcia said, you don't hire the Angels, they're not for hire. They found themselves in that role a few times, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, the Grateful Dead and the Angels did have a relationship of sorts. Both the Dead and the Angels were part of the Haight-Ashbury scene in San Francisco. At one point, a few of the Angels lived across the street from where the Dead lived. And as you can imagine, the counterculture part of society was common between the two groups, the hippies and the motorcycle clubs, and that overlapped. A more formal introduction between the Hells Angels and the Grateful Dead could have happened at the home of Ken Kesey in La Honda, California. Ken was a novelist, poet, and counterculture figure of the 1950s and 60s. He is known to many for being the writer of the novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He and a group of friends and followers, known as the Merry Pranksters, held parties at La Honda where the Grateful Dead and the Hells Angels were in attendance. The connection to the Hells Angels and Ken Kesey may have been through his friend, Hunter S. Thompson, who was associated with the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels after spending time with them. It led to his book, Hells Angels, The Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs. So it makes sense that it was originally reported that the Grateful Dead's management had hired them. The Angels did perform some security by watching over power lines that ran to the stage intended to lost children at the Human Being event in January of 1967. It was a free event held in the Golden Gate Park featuring the Grateful Dead and several other bands, and is what Jerry Garcia meant by they kinda just find their way into helping out. Others involved with the Altamont event say it was actually the Rolling Stones and their manager Sam Cutler who had hired the Hells Angels. Sam said that when he was told about the arrangement with the Angels, he and the Stones simply agreed, since they had far too many other things to handle and just delegated it to those who were in San Francisco putting the event together. The Rolling Stones had also used the Hells Angels, or possibly a similar group, during their free concert at London's Hyde Park earlier in 1969, and would have agreed to the same for Altamont. Some versions of the story have Rock Scully telling the Stones and Sam Cutler that there was a big difference between the London group and the California chapters of the Hells Angels and warned them against it. The Hells Angels were obviously not professional security personnel, and their approach to maintaining order was more in line with their own street-style enforcement rather than any formal crowd control. They were reportedly paid in $500 worth of beer for their services at Altamont, and the request was to simply guard the stage and keep fans off of it. Because the event had been moved from San Francisco to Altamont, which is between Tracy, California and Livermore, California, it meant that no one Hells Angels chapter had jurisdiction of the event. Members from the San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose chapters were in attendance. With the event underway, the hastily staged event at the sparse racetrack in the treeless hills beside the Altamont Pass, between Livermore and Tracy, now has a large crowd, a plethora of drugs, and Hells Angels drinking beer and enforcing security of the stage. What could go wrong? Also, the original location at Sears Point had the stage set up high on a hill. When the stage was moved to Altamont, it was placed down in a valley. The stage was only 4 feet high, just over a meter, and this may have been the key to most of the issues that followed. This low stage, with the ability for the crowd to push almost up onto the stage, put a highly intoxicated crowd in direct contact with the Hells Angels, attempting to keep everyone off the equipment and the stage. The area we are in now is called the Altamont Pass, formerly Livermore Pass, and it's a low mountain pass here in Northern California between Livermore and Tracy. The Altamont Pass wind farm is located here. It's one of the earliest wind farms in the United States. The first wind turbines were placed here in the early 1980s, and the wind farm is composed of nearly 6,000 wind turbines of various types, making it at one time the largest wind farm in the world in terms of capacity. In spite of the contentious and fragile opposing forces at the front of the stage, the concert went on and the performances began. Santana was the first act to perform. The set generally went smoothly, although the mood of both the crowd and the Hells Angels began to become progressively more agitated and violent. As the crowd surged up to and onto the stage, the Angels responded more aggressively. Jefferson Airplane performed next. During that set, the situation escalated. An incident occurred involving a member of the Hells Angels, Paul "Animal" Hibbets, and Marty Balin, the singer of Jefferson Airplane. Marty leapt from the stage to break up an altercation between the Angels and a crew member. Animal ended up punching Marty, knocking him unconscious. Grace Slick recalled that she was told Marty swore at Animal, and he responded with a punch and said, "You never say fuck you to an angel." That was followed by an interaction between Jefferson Airplane guitarist Paul Kantner and the Hells Angel Bill Sweet William Fritsch. After Marty was knocked out, Paul sarcastically thanked the Angels, leading to Sweet William taking hold of a microphone and arguing with him about the incident.
Hey man, I'd like to mention that the Hells Angels just smashed Marty Balin in the face and knocked him out for a bit. I'd like to thank you for that.
There's other ways.
Hey, wait, is this on? You're talking to me, I'm going to talk to you.
I'm not talking to you, man. I'm talking to the people that hit my lead singer
You're
in the head.
talking to my people.
Right.
Now let me tell you what's happening.
Man,
What's
you're not
happening?
We are now arriving at the Altamont Raceway Park. It's a motor sports racetrack here in Northern California, west of Tracy. It opened on July 22nd, 1966, and operated under many names during its 40-plus years of operation, such as Altamont Speedway, Altamont Raceway, Altamont Motorsports Park, Altamont Raceway Park and Arena, but after 42 years of operation, the Speedway closed in October 2008. And it was originally created when Fred Price, a motorcycle racer from Livermore, talked a construction crew that was building the California Aqueduct into moving some earth that flattened out a hillside to make home for the Speedway. He then created the 87-acre site, and it would have a half-mile dirt oval track for race cars and a smaller quarter-mile oval track for motorcycles. Not too long after opening, the original owner and manager was replaced by Dick Carter. It was Dick Carter who offered Altamont to the event organizers after they had been first turned down at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco and then by the Sears Point Raceway in Sonoma County. At some point, the Grateful Dead arrived at the venue and were told about the weird, ominous vibe, the violence, and what had happened to Marty. At that point, they decided not to take the stage and perform. Rex Jackson, the Grateful Dead's road manager, had also been in an argument or altercation that day with the Hells Angels. This series of events contributed to the chaotic and violent atmosphere of the concert, where now the performers were in this awkward three-way dynamic between the crowd, pool stick-wielding Hells Angels, and the bands. During Crosby, Stills' Nash & Young set, Stephen Stills was reportedly stabbed in the leg by a Hells Angel with a sharpened bicycle spoke. And then the headliners, the Rolling Stones, took the stage. As the day went on, tensions had grown between the crowd, the Angels, and the bands, and it began a weird dynamic with the performers trying to moderate between the Hells Angels and the crowd. At first, Grace Slick and then Mick Jagger sounded tense, scared, and a bit naive, using the peace and love vernacular of the times to diffuse increasingly violent behavior by a group not accustomed to much peace and love. I guess Mick Jagger could have predicted how the day would go, after being punched in the face just moments after getting off the helicopter on his way to backstage. The concert reached its tragic climax during the Rolling Stones set. There's a scene from the documentary that's a great example of the two cultures brought together in this almost surreal event unfolding. Bob Roberts, the president of the San Francisco chapter of the Hells Angels, is just staring over at Mick Jagger like he's looking at an alien. Bob explained in an interview years later that Mick Jagger was just like a different kind of character than I was used to.
Mick Jagger was a different kind of character than I was used to dealing with. Unfortunately, at that time, I didn't like that kind of character.
Oh, babies.
Baby, who's he talking to? Okay, baby, what do you... Just...
Just be cool down the front end, don't push around.
Disturbing.
I guess that sums up the difference between a member of the Hells Angel and a singer in a popular band in 1969. We will now head to our final destination today, the Tracy Municipal Airport. It has the airport code KTCY and is 3 miles, 5 kilometers southwest of Tracy in San Joaquin County, California. Numerous fights began to erupt between Angels and the crowd members, especially after some of the Hells Angels' motorcycles were knocked over in front of the stage. Within the first minute of the Stones' third song, Sympathy for the Devil, a fight erupted right in front of the crowd at the foot of the stage. After another appeal for calm, the band restarted the song and continued their set until the start of Under My Thumb. At this point, an 18-year-old Meredith Hunter climbed up on top of a speaker box next to the stage, and 2 of the Hells Angels got into a scuffle with him attempting to remove him. One of the Hells Angels punched him and chased him back into the crowd, where he ended up in another altercation with as many as 4 other Angels. Meredith returned to the front of the stage, where his girlfriend, Patty Bredenhoff, found him and begged him to calm down. Rock Scully later recalled he had noticed Meredith in the crowd, saying, "I saw what he was looking at, and that he was crazy, he was on drugs, and that he had a murderous intent. There was no doubt in my mind that he intended to do something terrible to Mick or somebody in the Rolling Stones." Others reported he was looking fairly normal, although visibly upset about the physical altercation with the Hells Angels. The best insight into the concert and what took place next is in the movie Gimme Shelter. It's a documentary film released in 1970, chronicling the events surrounding the Rolling Stones' 1969 U.S. tour and culminating in the infamous Altamont Free concert. Footage from the documentary shows Meredith Hunter easily identifiable in a lime green suit, drawing what appears to be a long-barreled .22 caliber revolver from his jacket and pointing it in the air. The film then shows Hells Angel Alan Pissarro, armed with a knife, running at Meredith from the side and stabbing him while attempting to take the gun. Alan Pissarro was reported to have stabbed him 5 times in the upper back. The gun was recovered and later turned over to the police. The autopsy the following day showed what everybody knew. He had been stabbed and beaten to death. Again, the actual stabbing can be seen in the documentary. Albert David Maysles, brothers, an American documentary filmmaking team, had set out to document the Rolling Stones tour in Gimme Shelter. They initially intended to capture the band's performances and behind-the-scenes moments, but the film's focus shifted following the events at Altamont. Gimme Shelter is notable for its cinematic style of handheld cameras and natural lighting, which added to the gritty realism of the footage. 2 days after the concert, Sonny Barger, president of the Oakland chapter of the Angels, called disc jockey Stephen Ponak at KSAN.
And here is Sonny Barger. Have I got it right, Sonny?
Yeah.
Okay, what's up?
Yeah, well, I can't tell you what happened. We're, like 4 o'clock because we had an officers meeting and we stayed behind and we got there about 4 o'clock. And like I'm bum-kicked about the whole thing. I don't like what happened there, on the whole show. But we were told that we would park in front of the stage,
Were you given any instructions as to how to keep order around the stage?
Well, this is what we were told. We were, supposed to sit on the edge of the stage and keep people off and, like a little bit back if we could. But out of all them people in that front area, which maybe for 25 rows back, you would say, I don't know how many you could even estimate at it, there was 3 or 4 people in there that come over to where the bikes were and kicked a couple of bikes over and, broke a couple of mirrors off of a couple of them and this and that. Well, you know what? I don't know if you think we pay $50 for them things or steal them or pay a lot for them or what, but most people that's got a good Harley chopper got a few grand invested in it. Ain't nobody going to kick my motorcycle. And they might think because they're in a crowd of 300,000 people that they can do it and get away with it. But when you're standing there looking at something that's your life and everything you got is invested in that thing and you love that thing better than you love anything in the world and you see a guy kick it, you know who he is. Go through 50 people to get to him, you're going to get him. And you know what? They got. And like this Mick Jagger, like he used us for dupes, man. And as far as I'm concerned, we were the biggest suckers for that idiot that I can ever see.
There were 4 deaths in total at Altamont. Meredith Hunter. Another person jumped into a canal and drowned, and 2 other people were killed in a hit-and-run accident. Well, that was the location of the Altamont Free Concert and the story about the event in 1969. If you enjoyed the tour today, the price is pretty reasonable if you could just reach down and hit that subscribe button below. It lets YouTube know you enjoy this type of content and really helps the channel.